and glad to see that you guys are with us. How you doing? For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Garrett Jones. I am the host of The Right Way on YouTube. And so this is my monthly live stream. This is going to be actually the last live stream I have until May. I'm skipping April because April is going to be a huge deal. I've got some cool stuff coming up, and I'll talk more about that here later in the live stream. But today I wanted to start by talking about reading goals. So let's see here. All right. Unfortunately, it's not allowing me to add anything into the background or anything like that. That's okay. So, talking about reading goals, my reading goals for the year, I set myself a goal of 30. I've never set a reading goal before. Last year, I started doing one towards the end of the year on Storygraph. I just thought it would be fun to chart everything that I've been reading over the course of 2023, and I ended up reading more than 40 books. Like every time I got close to the goal, I kept adding numbers to it. And so by the end of December, I read something like 44 or 45 books. Most of them were audiobooks, but I did read some paperbacks as well. And so it was kind of a weird chart. Right now, all I'm doing is I'm just charting the audiobooks I'm listening to, because I tend to listen to a lot of them. And right now, I'm at 47% of my goal. I set myself a goal for this year of 30 books. And as of right now, I have finished 14. That's 47% of my goal. And I've been listening to some really good books. I've been listening to I finished listening to the Michael C. Grumley series Breakthrough. There's 6 books in that series. I really enjoyed that series. It was a lot of fun. It's Tom Clancy meets Michael Crichton in the vibe of it. And I kind of mentioned this last year when I was talking about some of my reading goals. But then I've also been listening to various different sci-fi and classic literature. Like I finished some Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, The Mysterious Island, Journey to the Center of the Earth. I can't remember if that was at the end of last year or the start of this year, but I've Jules Verne is definitely one I've read this year, at least two of his titles. And then I listened to the first book in the there's a book called Columbus Day. It's a sci-fi mill story. Really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was really a neat story. And like the characterizations, the plot was really good. It flowed very easily. Lately, I've actually been listening to, and just coincidentally listening to 3 titles out of the Aliens franchise. It's a franchise that I've liked since I was younger. And ironically enough, this week was the release of the teaser for Alien Romulus, which I'm really excited for that movie to come out in August. Like I said, I'm a fan. And so reading through, like the book that I'm currently listening to is called The Cold Forge, which takes place on a space station, and Alien Romulus takes place on a space station. I'm like, this could be fun. So I'm really digging the stories, and so getting it's. I work on my feet a lot. I'm currently sitting in my office, but when I'm working, I end up doing a lot of. I'm on my feet a lot, working with my hands, and so it gives me a lot of time to listen to things. Sometimes I'm listening to music, other times I'm listening to podcasts, but most of the time I'm listening to audiobooks, and I can get at least on a good charge with my earbuds, at least 3 hours at max with them. So, and that's on a full charge. So, I don't know what your reading goals are, but I do encourage you to, if you're able to, keep track of it. I use the storygraph.com to do that. You can set up an account really easily. It's free. I mean, there are, premium membership things that you could do for a nominal cost every month or every year or whatever. But I do the easy stuff. It's really the cool thing is it charts out what you're listening to, so it tracks the genres that you're reading or listening to. It tracks which versions you're doing. So like if you for me, it's selecting audiobooks. So instead of charting the number of pages I'm reading in a given month, it's charting the number of minutes and hours that I'm listening to. And so, and what's cool is I get to balance that out against what I'm keeping track with on my time on Audible, because that's where I'm listening to most of my audiobooks. One audiobook that I did read that I really enjoyed, and this kind of ties back, this ties into something I have coming up here in April. I was reading this book called Yamada Monogatari, Demon Hunter. And I'm a big fan of Japanese culture. I lived in Japan for a year. And so the story takes place in feudal Japan during the Edo no Toki, the Edo period. And I really got a kick out of it. So the the story, Yamada is a Lord Yamada is he's a samurai, he's a bushi, and he's actually it's kind of interesting. He's a more of a detective than he has actual demon hunter. Like, he very rarely actually draws a sword for a fight, and so if he does, he does fight, but it's very rare. Most of the time, he is just inspecting and detecting and working through a case. And it's really kind of neat. It's very cerebral, but at the same time, there's kind of a spiritual element to it because it blends Shinto and Buddhism very well. And so if you get a chance, it's a whole series, and I wholly recommend getting a chance to read through those series, especially if you're a fan of Japanese folklore and mythology. It's really neat to do. Let's see. So, yeah. So, as far as reading goals, my goal for right now for the year is 30. Once I get closer to that goal, I might change it, I might increase it, or I might just slow down. Depends on what I'm doing. I did put out a poll earlier this week to see when I would hit my actual goal, and someone said July 13th. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll see where I'm at by July 13th. I can't. It's possible I'll surpass the goal by that point. Who knows? I'm a voracious reader. But one of the things I'm also going through right now is because I do have a master's degree in biblical studies. My focus was on the literature, the context, continuity, authorship, stuff like that. And so one of the things I've gotten into in the last couple of months is I've been listening to a podcast called Bema, which looks at the background of right now it's going through Old Testament, but it's looking at the background of Christianity and the Old Testament through a Hebrew and Jewish lens, which is really cool because there are certain word choices that don't really translate very well over into English, and so understanding the Hebraisms and those cultural contexts a little bit more deeply is really cool. Especially as I'm going through, I've been doing a study through the Old Testament, and so I've been pacing it with my morning devotions, and it's really kind of a neat encounter to have that. But it's kind of switching gears because I finished the first season, which goes through the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. In Christian churches, we call it the Pentateuch. So it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. But the order for us, the English Bible goes from there into Joshua, Judges, and the books of history, and then jumps into the books of the prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel, stuff like that. And the interesting thing is that the Jewish Bible or the Hebrew Bible doesn't do that. It actually changes that. It puts the books of prophecy in the middle section of of the Old Testament, with the histories on the opposite side. So it starts with law, prophets, and histories. So it's just a little bit of a different structure, but same content, just different order. So yeah, if you get a chance, if you're someone like me who likes that kind of stuff, I'd say take a listen to it. It's really good, really, really helpful. So yeah, moving on from that, talking about recent movies that I've seen. I don't get to go to the theater a whole heck of a lot these days. I used to go all the time, but my schedule doesn't allow for it. Especially if it's a week where I've got my son. I can't go see anything on those weeks because he's a priority for me. But I did end up going to see Dune Part 2. Loved it. It gets slow through the middle. It kind of does feel like a little bit of a drag, and like the opening sequences where it's chronicling Paul's training with the Fremen, it feels a little rushed because like it spans like the passage of like almost a year, and that's a lot of time for things to happen. Um, but the point is that they're jumping into more of the meat of what happens in that section of the book, I guess. I've never actually read Dune, so I'm not as familiar with the text as I am with the more recent films. And I've seen the old 1984 version by David Lynch, like hit and miss. Like you know, um, but I really enjoyed it. The special effects were great. The cinematography was fantastic. Um, some of the motivations, especially between Paul and Chani, and like it feels like very wishy washy, and I'm not entirely sure exactly. Like I know they're basing it off of the plot of the book, but like I'm certain decisions are made, and I'm like, okay, why are they being made like that? That makes no sense. And that's just from a storytelling perspective for me. And then last night I went to go see the new Ghostbusters movie, Frozen Empire, and I've been checking out some of my favorite YouTube commentators on this, and I kind of get where they're coming from, why they don't necessarily care for this one as much as they did like Afterlife or the original film. I actually very much enjoyed it. Like, so I one of the reviewers I look at is Mr. H Reviews. He said, it wasn't funny that the screening that he went to, nobody laughed. I'm like, were they all drunk? Were they stoned? What? Because there was some legitimately funny things, and it's at least for me, I was laughing out loud because these are characters that I've loved, ever since I was a kid. I grew up watching the cartoon, and the funny thing is that if you look at some interviews given by Gil Keenan, who's the writer and director, or Jason Reitman, who directed Afterlife and co-wrote this one and executively produced it, they talked about how this one is more in line with the cartoon series, The Real Ghostbusters from the 1980s. And and I really liked that cartoon series. I grew up on it, and you see a lot of the same elements, like the way the ghosts are designed, especially the main antagonist, like has similar characteristics to what was drawn and designed for that cartoon series. And so I really liked it. I thought it was really fun. There was good mystery. There's a couple parts where like it feels like the movie doesn't know where it wants to go, or that there's so many characters that it doesn't know what to do with them. Like Finn Wolfhard's character Trevor, like he just feels like he's kind of there. Like he doesn't really serve much of a point or purpose other than to be like just kind of like a mouthy teen. Because he's 18, he's on that cusp of being an adult, but he's not really an adult, very immature. And so, like, I don't know, it's kind of that weird zone. And aside from having them all move back to New York, there's really no reason for all of them to be there, because I mean, like, you have Paul Rudd's character Gruberson, who was actually a teacher in Oklahoma. Like he left a teaching job, like contracted teaching job with like paid vacation time and benefits, to become a Ghostbuster, where he's like, I mean, granted, he feels passionate about that, and that's great, but like it doesn't make any sense for that to happen, unless there's a better pay to it. The I get the kid. I guess Carrie Coon's character being Spangler's daughter and her kids being in New York makes sense because they're kind of taking on the legacy of Egon, which is really cool. And then seeing how the older Ghostbusters have kind of been moving on, how they're still incorporated is neat. But I really enjoyed this. I think this is one of the. I think this was a strong entry. A lot of people don't think that, but I do, and the reason for that is because I also in my headcanon, I'm also linking the 2009 video game as kind of a third entry. Like I'm actually looking at Afterlife as not it's the third film, but I'm looking at as the fourth entry. And this new one, Frozen Empire, being the fifth entry into this franchise, with the cartoon kind of thrown in the midst of this, because the game from 2009 takes place in 1991, 2 years after the events of Ghostbusters 2, and it deals with more of the Gozerian stuff. And so like there's a room in the library it's the old library that they go into in this movie, and it's actually a room that is incorporated beautifully in that video game. So like I'm like all the details are there, and I'm like, oh, I've been in this room before. Not literally, but like in the video game and now in the film, this is two places I've been, and it's so cool. I do think that we get in the film a little bit of too much Kumail Nanjiani. I don't like that guy. I don't think he's funny. I think he's actually kind of a putz. And like I don't like they could have gotten a better actor to do the role, but I think there are certain actors that would have, I don't know. Regardless, I thought it was a really neat way of incorporate, because that's the kind of thing that you would see in the cartoons, where you would have some random person that is kind of at the center of it and they don't even realize it, and they have some connection to what's going on. And so I think that is cool that they incorporated that. And I think that the potential for a power vacuum, especially in the wake of Gozer being officially defeated in Afterlife, it makes a lot of sense. The stuff with McKenna Grace's character does feel like it's a little protracted. And I don't know. But I enjoyed the movie for what it was. It was fun. It was adventurous, and it made me feel like I did when I was watching the cartoon as a kid. So maybe it's a little bit of nostalgia on my end, but I liked it. So with that said, I'm going to turn my attentions to a project that I'm working on. I'm doing a bit of a writing sprint today. I'm outlining something for a project. The project is called Ghost Protocol. That's the code name that we're working on. I started working on this last year, before I even knew that there was a new Ghostbusters movie coming out. So there's no connection there, but I am drawing inspiration from Ghostbusters. I'm also drawing inspiration from another movie that I very much enjoy called The Frighteners, which was written and directed by Peter Jackson, starring Michael J. Fox. So something for you guys to consider. The idea for the story actually came from a short 250-word microfiction story I wrote for NYC Midnight a little over a year ago. And it's one that I've actually read on my live stream. So if you want to go back and check that, you can probably do that. At some point, I'll probably link it to this video. But so far, I've written out the outline for the first chapter, because that short story is going to be the prologue for the story. And I don't know how long that's going to be, but yeah. So I'm going to be working on outlining the next couple of chapters. So let's see here. Librarian killed by ghost. All right. Henry Jacobs returns home after filming his TV show following a vision he had of the murder victim. So Henry he's a psychic, but he's a TV psychic. So he reconnects with two friends from high school, Sarah Benavides and Owen Carter. Sarah works as a cop on the library case. Owen runs a local bar. The reunion doesn't go well because Sarah doesn't want a celebrity-driven media circus, and Owen is bitter about Henry's return. So that's where I'm at with that. And so so I'm going to be working and spending the next few minutes just drafting the next chapter entry. So let's see here. Okay, so this is where I'm at with this one. So Sarah begins reviewing evidence found at the crime scene, i.e., the victim's cell phone and prints lifted from the books she held and blood splatter. She goes to inform the family. And Henry beats her to the family's house, and Sarah threatens to charge him with obstruction. So that's where I'm at with that. So yeah. I'm kind of taking this and kind of pacing this out. I'm going to start another section here in chapter 2. Henry goes to Owen's bar to reestablish communication with his one-time friend. He frustrates Owen And when the bartender or bar owner shoves him out the door, they both have a psychic flash connected to their respective pasts. Parentheses, individual and collective. All right. Well, that got my writing sprint done for the day. So hey, really quick, a couple of things I want to let you guys know about. So starting next week, 5 brand new episodes back to back each week, starting with the spring preview. This is going to be the author showcase for Author Awareness April. And then each Saturday through the month of April, a brand new episode each week. Each one's going to have an interview with one of my interviewees for that marathon. So tune in. I think you're going to love it. I hope you do. Anyway, that's it for me this week, this month. I will be back for my live stream in mid-May, and I look forward to giving you guys updates on whatever I'm working on there. All right, talk with you later.